Hey everybody, it's Kaylee from the blog The Simple Cozy Haven. Welcome back to my channel, and if you are new here, I hope you consider subscribing. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how we built this DIY banquette in our breakfast nook. I do think that it is a very beginner-friendly project, and even though my husband Robbie and I have been on our DIY journey for about 7 years now, I do think that it is beginner-friendly, and honestly, anyone can do it. If you've got a saw, if you've got a drill, I think you can do it. And I will share all the different products we used, tools that we use. I hope this video inspires you and you can use it as a guide on your own project. So with all that being said, let's get into the build. Once we had decided our measurements, we went and taped the size out on the floor, and this helps give you a good idea of what it's actually gonna look like. I moved the table over, we pretended to sit down, and yeah, I definitely suggest taping your stuff out with green tape before you start a build. So when you are building your boxes, you want to keep in mind that you are going to have a few layers of material on top. We used a 3/4 plywood, so we kept that into account when we were cutting these two sides. So I think we cut, the height was a total of 18 inches, and I believe we made it about 20 inches deep. This was just based on a chair that we had, and we liked the way it sat at that table. So we put all of our measurements up and we just built these boxes. I think it sounds a lot more complicated than it really is. Just build your boxes to the dimensions that you want your banquette to be, subtracting for the material that you are going to use on top of the box. We used clamps in this method to avoid wasting time and doing pocket holes, which you can totally do, but we felt like that was just kind of a waste of time for us. Definitely add some support pieces. Basically, like building a house wall, you're gonna need some stud to make sure that this puppy does not sag over time. Even though you're using 3/4 inch plywood, you know, after a few years of everyday use and sitting on it, things start to sag. So add more than you think you'll need. We actually went back and added more once we had everything in place. So now we're just creating another piece, a box, to go over the edges. So we would have something to nail onto. And here we're adding another horizontal support. And we end up going back in with 2 more studs underneath that just sat on the floor, just to give it some extra bracing. And we cut the baseboards using a multi-tool, and then we scored the caulk line so we could get it off. And our 2-year-old definitely wanted to help us with this part, but 2-year-olds and hammers are a little bit dangerous. And once we did a dry fit, we decided it was all good, and then we started cutting the let's just call it the skirting pieces for around the box, and this will be what you paint and what you actually see. So we used our table saw and our track saw to do this. You don't need these 2 tools necessarily, but it's what we have. So we wanted the top piece to hang over the side pieces, so Robbie is using a 3/4 inch piece to kind of draw out where we need to cut. And now we are pocket holing these little braces, and that is what's going to connect the bench to the wall and hold it in place. We're using the stud finder to mark the studs. And we did this on, I think, all 2 pieces of it, but I think we put in 4 or 5 total. This is just keeps it in place. It's not gonna go anywhere now. So we did another dry fit of the side pieces, and then we used glue and brad nails to put them all together. and I did not show this, but we had to cut the baseboard out a little bit more after this. I think we did a total of like 3 times, but you know, it's okay. No one's perfect. So we're just brad nailing all these in. Once you get the first one, you're kind of good. You just want to make sure that it stays flush with the top of your box that you built, just so your top piece sits perfectly flat. Now we are cutting down the top of the bench. We glued once again, y'all. We go through so much glue. I think we should just start buying the gallons of it. We attach that with brad nails as well. And this is when my husband was like, it's finally starting to look like something. I'm like, yeah, slowly but surely it does. And while we are just watching this happen, if you guys would like to follow me for more inspiration and just kind of see what's happening on the daily, I do have Instagram and TikTok. It is The Simple Cozy Haven. I'm also on Pinterest, so if you want to come pin along with me, I would absolutely adore that. So now we are using some 1x3 primed pieces to trim out the Banquette, and this kind of gives it just a really polished look. It hides all those unsightly corners. You can see how now it's going to cover up the plywood edge along the top. That's why we did it this way. That way we wouldn't have like a piece on the side, like a side piece coming up, and we'd have to fill even more grain, which filling grain is absolutely not fun. It's really just a lot of going back and forth. I feel like this, once you get to this part of the project, like trimming everything out, you're like, oh my gosh, when is it ever gonna be done? But then when it is, you're like, holy cow, I built that and it looks amazing. Gotta love the dog always being in our personal space. I don't think golden retrievers understand personal space at all. So once this was done, we added this awesome cove molding, which I'll show you in just a second, on the inside of the boxes. I feel like this just finished it out beautifully. It gave it so much more flair, and I think it kind of made it a little bit more modern yet traditional. It wasn't like so farmhouse. I feel like when you just use like board and batten type of look, which is what this kind of is at the moment, I feel like that can look super farmhouse, which nothing against farmhouse, but I'm personally over it for my own home. And so Robbie just used a little spacer in this one just to kind of divide it and give us a little bit more detail to look at. And we did a ton of wood filler and sanding, and that's probably my least favorite part about every project, is the amount of time we spend sanding, but again, it is so worth it. So there is it's the bead molding. I'm obsessed with it. It's only about $5. You can't beat it. So we added that along, and then we finished off the build with some base cap molding just to tie it into our baseboards. And I feel like that just kind of gives it a little bit more polished look. I know base cap is technically supposed to hide gaps, but I feel like it looks really, really nice. And so for the total measurements of ours, it was 18 inches tall, 20 inches deep off of the wall, 85 inches is the long side, and then 64 is the shorter side based off the wall. That's just what fit in our space, so yours will probably be different again, but yeah, that's kind of what our size came out to. And this round table that we have with 2 chairs on the side fits all of us perfectly. And so once we were done with all of that, we filled all the nail holes, did even more wood filling, and then it was time to paint, and we used the Sherwin-Williams Emerald Trim urethane paint in the color Accessible Beige at 90%, so it's just a little bit lighter than the original Accessible Beige. And this is what we painted the dry bar that is also in our breakfast nook. So it all matches. So for the wood filler, I love to use this little tool. Oh my goodness, what is this tool called? I don't know, but I do know. Wow, okay. Sorry guys, I'll write on the screen what this is. But I love to just like shove it down in there and then scrape it. That way there's really not that much to sand. Oh, putty knife. It's a putty knife. Yeah. Wow. Of course, Kaylee. So yeah, just use the putty knife just to kind of like push the wood filler down in there and then get off any extra. That way, again, much less to sand. And you're probably looking at that outlet like, what the heck? We actually had to move the outlet up, and then to cover up that gap, we added this piece of lattice that we just caulked to everything. And I think we're actually gonna go back and add some beadboard to the top and kind of create like a top to the banquette. I'm not sure. Again, everything comes with, you know, comes with time, and you live with things and you're like, okay, I'm gonna change it up a little bit. So that's what's probably gonna happen there, but this kind of just finished it off for us for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye!